Hi, I'm Susan Guthrie, America's Divorce Innovation Specialist, and today's video is going to be off that list that I've been doing videos off of some of the most frequently asked questions or Google searches regarding divorce. So today's is, what are the stages of divorce? And that's actually a very good question because most divorces, I would say almost every single one, is going to follow a pretty determined set path to resolution, to finalization. So let's go through those stages. The first stage is, everyone wants to jump ahead to, who gets what. But the very first stage of any divorce is what I call the quantifying stage, but in a more formal litigation divorce is going to be called discovery. You've probably heard the phrase, and this is the pulling together of all of the relevant information so that the parties know what it is they're dividing, and that's, all the assets, the valuation of everything, as well as the debt. You're not just talking about what's accrued on the positive side of the fence during the marriage. You're also going to be talking about debt. And at certain times in my career, the debt side of things has certainly outweighed the asset side of things. But you're going to, I call it again, quantifying the marital pie. You're also going to be pulling together all of the relevant information regarding your children and their needs and their best interests so that you can be working toward an appropriate parenting plan if you have minor children. So the first part of that divorce process, that discovery phase, can take quite a long time. Actually, in some divorces, that is the longest period of time, because the more complicated your finances or the more complicated your child situation may be, depending on what's going on in their lives, sometimes that can take quite some time. If you have a business that one of you owns, sometimes that takes a lot of, evaluation to find out what's the business worth. How much income is coming in? What's the actual asset value of the business? There's quite a bit that can go into a business. There can be valuation of pensions. There can be valuation of properties, real estate, valuation of restricted stock units. So there's all kinds of things that it's not always a simple matter of going and pulling, say, a bank statement. A bank account's really simple to value in most cases. You go pull the most current bank statement, you take a look at it, that tells you what it's worth. Those can fluctuate, of course, during the time of the divorce. So that's another factor that comes into discovery, is what's happening to these accounts as the divorce is continuing to go. Operating accounts tend to get depleted because you still need to pay your bills. You still need to pay your mortgage. You need to sometimes be funding two households. So that goes on during the time of the divorce. Other things can happen because people are still making payments out of their paychecks, say, into 401ks or IRAs, or have to pay other things, or investment accounts may go up or may go down. So discovery is also something that needs to be constantly updated as things change. But that is the very first part, because until you know what you have, you can't start dividing it up. So that would take us to the next stage, because once you know what your marital pie is, that's when you start discussing dividing that up, or you enter into the negotiation phase. And this is where, either through your attorneys, if you're doing traditional litigation, or sitting with your mediator, as I prefer, and talking with your spouse with the guidance of your mediator, to try and come to agreements about how you're going to divide up your marital estate or your marital pie, which slices of pie each of you are going to get. Now, as you're moving through that process, keep in mind that it's not cut and dried. You don't, most divorces settle somewhere in that realm of, equal division of the marital pie, but you don't just cut the pie in half and give each person half of the pie. because in real life, that would be liquidating every single asset you have, paying off every single debt you have, that are all these that are marital, and then just handing each of you a check for 50% or whatever the agreed upon division would be. And in most people's lives, that's not a practical result. You can't, just sell everything you own and hand out those checks. So it becomes a matter of moving the puzzle pieces around so that you end up with a roughly equal division, or for some people, an exact equal division down to the penny. It depends on, how much time you want to spend and how much money you want to spend making things exactly equal. But hopefully coming to a resolution in some fashion as to how everything will be divided up. And that includes your children's parenting time, the time that you're going to spend with your children and your co-parenting. Once you come to a resolution on all of that and the puzzle is completed, it will be put into what we call a marital settlement agreement or a separation agreement or a divorce agreement. And that becomes what you take to court for the next stage of your case, if you do manage to resolve it. And that would be for your final court hearing for your judgment. So that is the actual finalization of your divorce. And if you have come to an agreement, it's usually a very simple matter of going into court in some states, having the judge review that agreement that you've achieved, and the judge approving it and making it a court order and adjudicating you divorced. In some states like California, you don't even need to go to court in most cases for that final hearing. You just submit your paperwork. Now, judgment is what you're hoping to achieve, and you do hope to achieve that by resolving things through negotiation in some fashion. If you were one of the 5% or so cases that cannot resolve it, then you're going to go to trial. And that's where, you put on your evidence, you bring in your version of the facts, you put on testimony, you introduce evidence, and a judge will give you a final judgment telling you how you're going to divide your marital pie. And if you have minor children and did not resolve custody, how you're going to co-parent your children. Now, once you get past judgment, there is still a final stage. Your divorce is final, but I always caution people that there is a post-judgment process that you need to go through. It's not a formal process through the court, but there are always things in your divorce judgment, whether it came from a judge or you resolved it, that you need to take care of after the divorce is finalized. It can be things like dividing out those bank accounts that you've divided. It can be doing qualified domestic relations orders to divide your retirement accounts in accordance with your judgment. New estate planning, closing out accounts that are no longer going to be joint or removing the other property from those accounts, changing beneficiaries from on life insurance policies, changing medical insurance, changing all, relevant information. So what I always suggest is going through your judgment, paragraph by paragraph, section by section, and coming up with a checklist of all of the things that need to be done after the divorce, and put your attention to that as quickly as possible after the divorce, because you have certain rights that can be affected if you let those things lag, which people do all of the time. And if you let it go, often things fall through the cracks, and that can have serious consequences down the road. So I always advise my clients to pay as much attention to the post-judgment period as you did to everything coming up to judgment. It's very important to reach out to your attorney or, your other professionals to make sure that those things do get done. So those are the stages of divorce. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at susan@divorceinaBetterWay.com. And thank you for joining me today.